You have been lied to about the nature of your pulse. That cold, hollow thrumming in your chest when the room goes quiet or the stakes go high isn't a signal of your weakness. It is the sound of your survival mechanism, screaming for a purpose it no longer understands. We spend our lives trying to outrun the shadow of our own anxiety, treating fear like a terminal diagnosis when it is, in fact, the most honest advisor you will ever have. To overcome fear is not to delete it from your operating system. It is to reprogram the way you interpret the signal. If you wait for the day you feel ready, you will die in the waiting room of your own life. Imagine a wolf that has forgotten how to hunt, trapped in a cage of silk and glass. It still feels the urge to bite, the instinct to run, but there is no prey and no horizon. That is the modern human condition. Your fear is a prehistoric weapon being used in a sterile room. It has nowhere to go, so it turns inward, gnawing at your confidence in your sleep. We call it stress, we call it not being ready, but the truth is far more uncomfortable. Your fear is bored. It is looking for a battle you are too afraid to give it. Motivation code suggests that the first step to liberation is acknowledging that your fear isn't trying to stop you. It is trying to prepare you for a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. The ancient Stoics understood a secret that we have buried under a mountain of comfort. They knew that the obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. When Marcus Aurelius wrote about the mind's ability to turn every hindrance into an advantage, he wasn't talking about positive thinking. He was talking about tactical alchemy. He understood that fear is a raw material, like unrefined ore. It is heavy, it is ugly, and it is difficult to carry. But if you put it through the furnace of deliberate action, it becomes the steel of character. You don't need less fear. You need a hotter furnace. Consider the physics of a breakthrough. A seedling doesn't grow by asking the soil for permission. It grows by exerting a quiet, relentless pressure against the darkness until the darkness breaks. Most of us are waiting for the light to appear before we start pushing. We want the certainty of the sun before we commit to the struggle of the sprout. But biology doesn't work that way, and neither does the soul. The strength is built in the pushing, not in the seeing. If you're waiting for the how-to guide to feel comfortable before you take the leap, you are fundamentally misunderstanding the contract of existence. But here is where the logic takes a sharp, jagged turn. What if the thing you are most afraid of isn't failure, but the responsibility of success? Most people use fear as a convenient excuse to remain small. It is a protective layer of scar tissue that keeps the world at a distance. If you fail, you can blame the fear. If you never try, you can keep the fantasy of your potential intact. But if you actually step into the arena, you lose the right to be a victim. You lose the comfort of what if. This is the pivot point where most people turn back. They realize that overcoming fear means losing their favorite excuse. There is a specific kind of silence that happens just before a disaster. It is the same silence that exists in the millisecond before you make a life-changing decision. In that space, your brain is firing millions of signals, trying to predict the future based on a past that no longer applies. You are a biological machine designed to stay alive, not to be happy. Happiness is a luxury. Survival is the priority. This is why your brain will always prioritize the safe, boring path. It would rather you be a miserable survivor than a dead dreamer. To overcome this, you have to become a bad operator of your own biology. You have to learn to ignore the low fuel light of your courage and keep driving. We often talk about facing our fears as if it's a singular event, a cinematic moment where the music swells and the hero charges the dragon. In reality, it is a series of boring, repetitive choices made in the dark. It is the choice to send the email when your hand is shaking. It is the choice to speak the truth when your voice is cracking. It is the discipline of the mundane. Motivation Code considers this incremental approach to be the only sustainable way to build a life of consequence. You don't kill the dragon in one blow, you bleed it out through 1,000 tiny acts of defiance.
The neuroscience of dread tells us something fascinating about the human mind. The part of your brain that processes physical pain is the same part that processes social rejection and the fear of the unknown. To your nervous system, a harsh criticism feels like a physical wound. This is why the fear of what people think is so paralyzing. It's not just an intellectual concern, it is a perceived threat to your survival. In the ancestral environment, being cast out from the tribe meant certain death, but you are no longer on the savannah. The tribe is now a collection of strangers on a screen who don't know your name. Your biology hasn't caught up to your technology. You are running 50,000-year-old software on a modern interface. Think about the last time you were truly terrified. Your heart rate spiked, your palms grew damp, and your vision narrowed. This is the fight or flight response. But there is a third option that we rarely discuss: freeze. Most people live their entire lives in a state of chronic freeze. They aren't running, and they aren't fighting. They are just waiting. They are waiting for the economy to change, for their partner to understand them, for the right time to start. But time is the one resource that fear cannot freeze. It continues to leak away while you stand still, hoping for a sign that will never come. The secret to breaking the freeze is not finding your why or manifesting your destiny. It is much simpler and much more brutal. It is the realization that you are already dying. Every second that passes is a second you will never get back. When you realize that the ultimate worst-case scenario, death, is already guaranteed, the smaller fears start to look ridiculous. Why are you afraid of a no when the universe is eventually going to give you a final no anyway? This is the Zen of the abyss. When you accept that the ground is falling away, you realize that you might as well try to fly.
But let's look deeper into the architecture of the open loop in your mind. Every time you avoid something because of fear, you create a psychic debt. You tell your subconscious mind that you are not capable of handling that specific challenge. This debt accrues interest. The next time you face a similar challenge, it feels twice as heavy because you have the memory of the last time you ran away. You are effectively training yourself to be a coward. Conversely, every time you act in spite of fear, you pay down that debt. You build a competence equity that makes the next challenge feel lighter. The world doesn't reward the fearless, it rewards the brave. There is a massive difference. Fearlessness is a brain defect or a lie. Bravery is feeling the terror in your bones and doing the work anyway. It is a muscle that must be exercised daily. If you don't do something that scares you at least once a week, your bravery muscle will atrophy. You will become someone who is easily intimidated by life. You will start to see threats where there are only opportunities. Motivation Code suggests that we should seek out managed discomfort as a form of spiritual hygiene. Consider the Japanese concept of kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The philosophy is that the piece is more beautiful for having been broken. Your fears and the failures they led to are the cracks in your history. If you try to hide them, you remain fragile. But if you fill those cracks with the gold of wisdom and persistence, you become a work of art. The version of you that has never been afraid is a shallow, uninteresting person. The version of you that has crawled through the fire and come out the other side is someone worth knowing. We have a pathological obsession with comfort in the modern age. We have climate-controlled rooms, on-demand entertainment, and food delivered to our doors. We have removed almost every physical threat from our lives, but in doing so, we have made our psychological threats feel monumental. Because we no longer have to worry about tigers, we worry about likes. Because we no longer have to worry about starvation, we worry about awkwardness. We have shrunk our world so much that the smallest pebbles look like mountains. To overcome fear, you must expand your world. You must put yourself in situations where your trivial worries are eclipsed by actual stakes.
There is a paradoxical truth at the heart of human psychology. The more you try to avoid pain, the more sensitive you become to it. By shielding yourself from the things that scare you, you are making yourself more vulnerable, not less. You are lowering your threshold for reality. This is why the most comfortable people are often the most anxious. They have no calluses on their souls. They haven't built the resilience that comes from standing in the wind. If you want to be truly fearless, you must stop seeking protection and start seeking exposure.
Let's talk about the delayed gratification of courage. Most people want the reward before the risk. They want the confidence before the action. But confidence is a lagging indicator. It is the result of having done the thing, not the prerequisite for doing it. You don't get confident and then start your business. You start your business, survive the first 6 months of terror, and then, and only then, do you start to feel confident. The fear is the entry fee. If you aren't willing to pay it, you don't get to play the game. What if I told you that your fear is actually a map? If you look closely at the things that scare you the most, they usually point directly to the things you value the most. You aren't afraid of public speaking because of the stage. You're afraid because you care about your reputation and your message. You aren't afraid of intimacy because of the other person. You're afraid because you value connection and fear its loss. Your fear is a high-precision instrument that identifies your greatest potentials. If you follow the fear, you follow your purpose. The final reveal of the human condition is this. Fear is not an obstacle to be overcome. It is the energy required to transcend. Think of a rocket sitting on a launch pad. It is filled with thousands of gallons of highly explosive, incredibly dangerous fuel. If that fuel isn't contained and directed, it will destroy everything in its path. But if it is channeled through a narrow nozzle, it creates the thrust necessary to escape gravity. Your fear is that fuel. Most people let it leak out in the form of anxiety and worry, which slowly corrodes their lives. But if you channel that same energy into a singular, focused action, it becomes the power that launches you into a new dimension of existence.
We often think of fear as a dark room we are trapped in. But what if the room isn't dark? What if it's just that you haven't opened your eyes yet? The darkness is just the absence of information. Once you step into the room and start moving around, you realize that the shapes you thought were monsters are just furniture. The monster of your debt is just a series of numbers that need a plan. The monster of your failed relationship is just a series of lessons that need integration. The monster of your future is just a blank canvas that needs a first stroke.
Stop waiting for the fear to go away. It is never going away. As long as you are growing, as long as you are pushing boundaries, fear will be your constant companion. It is the shadow cast by your own greatness. If you have no fear, you have no shadow, which means you aren't standing in the light. Embrace the shaking hands. Embrace the racing heart. These are the signs that you are alive, that you are relevant, and that you are standing on the edge of something that matters. Motivation Code reminds us that the only thing to truly fear is a life spent in the gray twilight of safety, where you never know the thrill of the hunt or the glory of the climb. True discipline is the ability to command yourself to move when every cell in your body is screaming for you to stay still. It is the sovereignty of the will over the biology. You are not your thoughts, and you are not your feelings. You are the observer who decides which thoughts to follow and which feelings to honor. When fear says stop, you have the power to say, noted, but we are moving anyway.
This is the ultimate form of human freedom. It is the ability to choose your response to the stimulus of the world. The battle is not against the world. The world is indifferent to your success or failure. The battle is against the version of you that wants to quit. It is a civil war that takes place in the silent corridors of your mind every single morning. Every time you choose the difficult path over the easy one, you are winning a skirmish. Every time you choose truth over convenience, you are gaining ground. This is the battle tone of a life well lived. It is sharp, it is intense, and it is beautiful.
In the end, we are all just stories we tell ourselves. Most people tell a story of "I couldn't because I was afraid." They cast fear as the villain in their autobiography. But you have the power to edit that story. You can cast fear as the mentor, the demanding teacher who pushed you to find strength you didn't know you had. You can make your fear the catalyst for your legend. The abyss is only scary until you realize you can build a bridge. And the bridge is built out of the very stones that fear tried to use to wall you in.
Look at the horizon. It is vast, it is uncertain, and it is beautiful. It represents everything you don't know yet. You can look at it with dread, or you can look at it with the hunger of a conqueror. The difference is not in the horizon, it is in the eyes of the beholder. Open your eyes, take a breath, feel the fear, and then, for the love of everything that is holy and everything that is possible, move. The path is created by the walking. The strength is created by the struggle, and the hero is created by the fear.
Every great achievement in human history was preceded by a moment of profound doubt. Leonardo didn't know if the Mona Lisa would be a masterpiece. Churchill didn't know if the tide would turn. They were all operating in the dark, fueled by the same adrenaline that you are trying to suppress. The only difference is that they accepted the uncertainty as the cost of admission. They didn't try to solve the fear, they lived through it. The final reveal is that there is no other side to fear. There is only a higher level of play. As you overcome the fear of rejection, you enter the fear of leadership. As you overcome the fear of lack, you enter the fear of stewardship. Life is a game of upgrading your fears. If you aren't afraid right now, you aren't playing a big enough game. The goal isn't to be comfortable. The goal is to be capable of handling higher levels of intensity.